Good morning. I'm Ken Kirschenbaum, and we have a webinar special today. Morgan Hurdle from Rapid Response Monitoring is giving a presentation on the state of monitoring, technology, and other issues I'm sure he's going to raise. And I'll be turning over the presentation to him shortly. Before I do, I want to let you know, some of you have signed on, including audio capability, meaning that we can hear you once I unmute you. So when if it's manageable, I may do that so that you can ask questions directly to Morgan, and everyone else will be able to hear it during the presentation. If that becomes too hard to coordinate, then use your question feature on the web program to write in your question, and then I'll read it to Morgan as we go along. Okay, so I'm getting ready to turn it over to Morgan. Morgan, please tell everybody who you are and your credentials and everybody else, everything else about you that makes you very interesting. And Morgan is certainly an expert in the alarm industry. He answers an awful lot of questions for me and participates in the forum that I send out. And he's certainly someone that you should be listening to. And I'm glad you came today to participate in this webinar. Okay, Morgan, I'm turning it over to you right now.
Great, thanks, Ken. Good morning, everybody. As Ken said, my name is Morgan Hertel. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Rapid Response Monitoring, and two offices in Syracuse, New York, and Corona, California. As you can all imagine, we're all hunkered down right now. I'm working from home, so apologize for any audio or video issues that we might have today, but we are in full quarantine, trying to make sure that we keep our staff safe, and that includes keeping me out of the offices as well. I've been in the alarm industry for over 40 years now. I'm an old guy, but seen an awful lot of changes in that 40 years. Today, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to walk you through a couple of things that are
Here he goes.
Sort of up and coming with central station operations and what that looks like, and then hopefully we're going to save some time at the end for some questions and answers. And even though today's topic is primarily on and all of our courses, I'll be happy to answer anything that anybody else has. So with that, let's get going. I'm going to chat windows open. So chat with me. We can do that. Should be able to do that. See where this.
Morgan, your audio is breaking up a bit. You need to do something to fix your mic.
I'm working on it. It's doing webinars, I guess. If you really think this today, it's more than what it used to be. You know, it used to be that central stations were, fairly small and regional organizations, and they only operated, within sometimes only even miles of the organization, and didn't really go any further. And they were all fairly small. And today that's changing a lot. Today we're handling many different types of signals, many different types of alarms, a lot of emergencies, and so we're very quickly morphing into a critical events center that really is not just handling burglar and fire alarms. It's handling just about anything that a human can possibly do to help another human being with a crisis. When you look at what our value propositions today are, is that we're experts in doing this. We have people that are specially trained to try and assess the situation, to understand what that looks like, know how to get first responders from all over the country, and in many cases all over the world, how to get people help. We have information many people, many first responders don't have. We have call lists. We have a lot of different contacts that other people just don't have. And so we have the ability to not only help those people, but also notify, all the stakeholders involved in how that works. It's very different from, like what a 911 center does today. We also have many people that are trained in medical emergencies and how to manage medical emergencies, as well as, dealing with the traditional fire and those types of events. When you really look at what a central station looks like today, there's a couple of core elements that are involved in that. You obviously have people that are very well trained to do this, or at least they should be well trained to do this. The attention to detail has to be impeccable. You really have to be able to make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted. But on top of all that, the technology has to be there to manage all this. You have to have redundancy and multiple ways of getting things in and out of your centers. You have to have people in terms of redundancy, all that, and that's much more than than any other public style communication center today. Most central stations, especially the larger ones, are immensely overbuilt compared to what you see in 911 centers today. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the future of monitoring and what that looks like, and what some of the challenges are and what some of the opportunities are today. If you look at just the United States and forget Canada and some of the other parts of the country, other parts of the world, although it's similar in nature, we certainly are looking at the economy and what that does to labor pressure. As you all know, everybody that's on this call today is challenged with hiring. It's an hire an individual, and even more work to keep that individual. And so you're starting to have to build new strategies, new ways of attracting talent to be able to come and work for you. We have pressures that we've really never had before. When you really think about it, you have not only do you have minimum wage requirements that are changing on a regular basis, you have competitors that are coming into the marketplaces, you have big companies like Amazon that are coming in and just taking unskilled labor at just incredible rates when you look at that. So it makes a lot of this stuff challenging. You also have on top of having labor problems and trying to get labor, but you now also have a whole new level of technology things that you have to get into. And so not only are you working through hiring people, just warm bodies that you can train, that meet those qualifications, that have clean backgrounds and all that stuff. But now because your technology is dramatically increasing, you now have to have people that are capable of managing all that new technology, and that in and of itself is an amazing amount of work to be able to do. You're no longer hiring a $75,000 a year all in IT guy. Now you're hiring 5 different 200,000 a year employees to manage cybersecurity and firewalls and networks and phone systems and things like that. So it's all starting to get there. You also have insurance on top of all that adds to that. Today we have, in addition to all the technology, we now have market forces like all the data privacy laws and rules that are starting to apply, and whether that's GDPR that came in from Europe, or the the CCPA Act that was recently passed, or you have American Data Dissemination Act that came into 2019. New York's got a new one called the SHIELD Act, which is coming. All of these all of these new rules and laws, not only do they put additional requirements on top of your existing staff and everything else, but they all now require specialized technology in order to meet them. And then with that specialized technology, you now have to have on top of that the people that know how to manage that specialized technology. So it's a constantly evolving, never-ending process to try and keep up. You're having all different kinds of certifications being asked of you. You know, the gold standard before was UL, and as long as you could manage to get through UL, you could do a pretty good job at this. And now you have organizations like HIPAA and ISO and CPI and SOC 2 requirements. All these new requirements are now coming into play in order to keep you safe and secure and all those kinds of things. But all of that starts to get very expensive, very complicated in how to make that work. You also have a very quickly evolving consumer platform. So the boomers are getting older, and Gen X, Gen Y, all these new generations are becoming now your customers, and those customers have different wants, different needs, different personalities as it relates to how they want to consume and digest security. It's no longer about having a keypad on the wall and you turn it on, you turn it off. Their expectation is very different, and so not only do you have to now be able to provide that on the field side of that equation, but now you're having to provide those same kinds of different services on the monitoring side, and especially when you're talking about communicating with them. I'm sure it's to no surprise that you'll find out that most of the people that are younger today, they don't want to talk to you. They want to interact with you digitally somehow, and so that all has to spill into the central station today. We now have video like nobody's business. So there's an expectation that consumers will have, CSI like video in everything that we do, and everything that we provide is now going to be, this very high-end, high-res video, and all this stuff is getting now fused into the central station and has to be supported at that end as well as on the field end. And so there's this constant thing that's going on to make sure that you stay relevant day in and day out. And so when you really look at it, you have increased costs of labor, you have increased investments in technology, you have a lot of different data privacy issues, and you have this constant downward pressure in terms of pricing. I don't know anybody in the wholesale business that's been able to raise their rates in as long as I've been doing this. Everything's been pushing it down. And I think we're at the bottom now, and that trend's likely to start to reverse, because all these new services, all of this new stuff is incredibly expensive. And despite all the continued automation and continued efficiencies and stuff, there comes a time when there isn't any left. And so you're starting to see how the bigger centers are trying to cope with managing all these different things. And thank God for economies of scale, and being able to drive efficiencies and use automation has been there to keep pricing stable and in a place that people can count on. But we're starting to run out of runway there. So that's the bad news. The bad news is that there's a lot going on. The good news, serious opportunities when we start to really look at that, because we're no longer just tied to a burglar alarm panel. It means that we can do just about anything and everything that evolves around this industry. You're starting to see a lot of consolidation. So you're starting to see smaller organizations get folded into larger organizations. And so there's a ton of opportunities in the consolidation world. If there was a time to consider, buying some of your smaller competitors or even some of your larger competitors out there, now might be a good time to do that. You're also starting to see some money start to flow out. Some of the banks are starting to lighten up a little bit. We'll see what happens with this whole COVID thing, but up until a few weeks ago, you were starting to see some new lenders come into this business, and they're looking for people that have the expertise in order to be able to continue to do this. One thing's for sure is that the number of monitored accounts that are happening in the United States and abroad is increasing. It's no longer flat. We were for so many years stuck in that 20, 25%, and that number is now definitely on the upswing, which is good. Cloud services are starting to become a big deal. We're doing more and more hosting for smaller centers. So those smaller centers that, for example, can't afford to do their own technology or can't afford to provide the people to do the technology, we're offering that our whole platform in a hosted world for those smaller dealers. And that includes everything from, training of operators or training trainers to train operators to being able to provide all the various apps and tools and things that we provide for dealers out there today. And so you're starting to see an awful lot more of that. Now that everybody's sort of accepted the cloud as a concept, you're starting to see more and more of that. Everybody's heard about the Internet of Things, and so the Internet of Things is starting to be a thing, and so your opportunities are really only as limited by your imagination. If you can think about some product or some service that can help another human being, then today, with the amount of connectivity that we have in the world, those kinds of services are completely available to just about anybody out there that wants to try and make that work. We're seeing more and more, almost daily we have new platforms coming to us wanting to say, hey, can you monitor this? Can you figure out how to get this into the dealer channel? And when you look at, the amount of things that are out there today that are connected, it's billions, and it's increasing every day. So that is a huge opportunity. If you're not doing anything like that, you definitely need to figure that part out, because that's going to be a big part of what we're doing over the next I don't know, 5-10 years. You're also seeing tons and tons of different kinds of organizations get into IoT. It's no longer just about an entrepreneur, for example. You're seeing just about everything now have some sort of connectivity into it. Mainstream stuff like things like washing machines, dryers, refrigerators, bicycle helmets, cars, you name it. When you start to look at it, those are all opportunities that we can start to leverage and start to provide critical services. And you say, well, what am I going to monitor on a dryer? Who cares when my clothes are done? Well, nobody might care when your clothes are done, but you might want to know if that dryer's all of a sudden significantly overheated and about ready to catch fire. That might be a really good way to save a life before the smoke detector 2 stories up detects that smoke. It might be really nice to be able to warn a homeowner that their dryer's about ready to, grenade and it's got something burning inside of it now. It might also be nice to know when somebody's freezer's gonna give out over a long weekend when people are gone on vacation, and all of a sudden, their $400 worth of food that they just waited in line at Costco for 4 hours is about ready to go bad because the refrigerator quit working. Those are the kind of things that IoT can bring to the table that bring significant value to a consumer. And those are the kinds of things that you need to start to think about, start to think outside the box. How can we monitor this? How can we make it better for humanity? The opportunities are absolutely there. You just got to figure out how to get involved and get them leveraged. Video is certainly, a hot topic today, both in terms of understanding and how to reduce false alarms, but also being able to understand, what's going on at the facility. Facilities now are using video for all different. How do people walk through a convenience store, to inventory on shelves, to fire, intrusion, you name it. Video is becoming a big part of what's going on today. And so if you're not involved in that, you need to get involved in that. You need to understand what the opportunities are and how to get involved with that, because video is going to be more and more of a mainstay in the next generation of alarm systems and products and services. And it's not just limited to intrusion. Yes.
Morgan, let me just interrupt for a second. When you talk about
Sure.
video monitoring, an issue that's coming up now is facial recognition, which I think is pretty close to video monitoring. Can you just comment on that issue if
Sure.
you're able to?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, the issues that are coming up with facial recognition are primarily focused around organization using facial recognition to do profiling and to understand something about a consumer. So, for example, you may have a law enforcement may be able to look for somebody. They're on the top 10 wanted list, and you have facial recognition, and so people are afraid that I'll be identified as the wrong person, and I'll be arrested and thrown in jail and falsely accused of some crime. And so that's the biggest pushback for facial recognition, is that people fear that their rights will be somehow infringed upon, using facial recognition for that. The reality of it is facial recognition's been around for a long time and likely will be around for a long time. But today it's really not playing into the home security market yet. I think it will be. I think you'll start to see things like the concept of friend or foe. So, for example, you have video set up in your home. You should easily, as a homeowner, you could, for example, enroll your kids, and people that routinely enter into your home. And then if an alarm goes off and video sees one of those people that has already been defined as a friend, then that could drastically change the workflow in a central station. There's no point in dispatching the police on an intrusion signal if, for example, it's you walked in and you just didn't have time to get the system turned off, and boom, we got video of you. And so I think you're going to see this, knee-jerk reaction calm down a little bit, and the ability to use the technology for that. It only makes sense, and I think we all have to be careful about privacy issues, and we all have to be cognizant about people's rights and what that looks like. But at the same time, if we could cut down false alarms significantly by using video and concepts of friend or foe, I think it would make a big difference. I would not go out and sell anybody facial recognition systems today. I think that might be something you want to wait on a little bit. But in the meantime, you're definitely going to see the technology increase to be able to do this more and more accurately. And even on the smaller, inexpensive, camera platforms like Nest and things like that are starting to do this, starting to remember pictures and faces and do that kind of work for you to make your home more secure and more safe. And that's really drives the whole concept about security as a lifestyle. It's not just a keypad that turns your security on and off. It's security that's ever present, and that's what consumers today want. They want this sort of envelope around them that they don't really have to think about a lot. And using video analytics and facial recognition and AI will definitely lend itself into those markets. Speaking of AI, you're gonna see leaps and bounds in AI start to change things, especially with respect to intrusion alarms. But even medical alarms are starting to become influenced by AI. Let me give you some examples of how this could be used. So let's say, for example, you have a home alarm and it triggers. We know an awful lot about what's going on in a home today. We know, for example, whose cell phones are on and off the Wi-Fi network, when they came, when they went. We probably know what your Google Calendar looks like because you allowed it to be seen through your security app. So we might know that you're already at a doctor's appointment or already at a dentist and you're not at home. We already know things like where you might be located. Are you in the home, outside of the home, on your way? Did you just leave? All that kind of stuff, your normal day-to-day schedules using machine learning. We can take all that information and have AI engines now start to crunch all those numbers and crunch all that data and come up with some scoring to be able to determine what the workflow looks like on the central station. So a simple example would be consumer gets home, their Wi-Fi joins, their phone joins the Wi-Fi network, their GPS in their phone says they just got home. We now have an alarm from the home. There's a pretty safe bet if we take all that and marry that all together and look at that in an AI engine to say that, yeah, the homeowner's definitely home. And there's no reason to now dispatch on that homeowner. All we're going to do is create a false alarm, fine, and potentially have a problem between law enforcement and a consumer being there at the same time, same place. That's just a very simple example of how AI could start to be leveraged in the background. Operators wouldn't have to know how to manage this. It would just be managed for them in the background. On the medical side, another good one to think about would be fall detection is a big problem today. Seniors fall constantly, but yet our fall detection methodology is far from accurate. So most of them average 70 to 80% false alarm rates. But if I could take that fall detection and couple that with, say, nothing more than, say, your heart rate or your respiratory rate, I could now marry those two together. And, for example, if I have a fall detection incident, but your heart rate or your respiratory rate didn't change, it's probably more than likely you took the fall detector thing and threw it on the countertop and didn't think twice about sitting down to watch TV. And, we don't have to send somebody out to see if you fell, if you didn't answer the phone. We would know that ahead of time, and so we can marry those two together. On the other hand, if we have a fall detection and your heart rate's dramatically changing, your respiratory rate changes, pretty high likelihood that you did fall. And we now have much better information at the central station with how to react to that fall. And you're going to see more and more and more of this machine learning going on over the next 5 to 10 years, to the point where I think we'll at some point get to where the false alarm rate has gone upside down. So instead of dispatching 95 or 98 or 99% false alarm rates, we'll be dispatching 95, 98% real alarms and 2% false alarm rates. Obviously, DIY is out there, and so there's plenty of opportunities to monitor that kind of stuff. There are no lack of work that are starting to create which are very sophisticated when you start to look at them today, and those are starting to gain market share. And so those opportunities to be able to market to monitor those and to get involved in those, or to create offerings. If you're a full service dealer and you want to create your own DIY platform, there are plenty of ways and products to do that as well. May not be something you want to specialize in, but there's certainly opportunities out there to be able to do that. You also have the concept of monitoring yourself, where you have consumers that are now, they want to do that. So we're seeing both the sort of DIY platforms that allow you to monitor yourself, but we're also seeing some full-time, full service dealers that are offering a MIY product. Some of them are offering it as an on-demand product. So when they're home and all is good, they're monitoring it themselves. When they go on vacation, they buy a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is becomes an incremental bump, and also a gateway to full service monitoring and professional monitoring all the way around. A lot of opportunities in that space as well. I don't think it's going to seriously impact on the full service organizations, but it's something that's out there, and better to be part of it than ignore it and have it surprise you. Connected health, huge. I just touched on that a little bit, but aging in place is becoming the norm today for a lot of different reasons. And so you're seeing tons of new products that are coming into this space. Just go to CES. I mean, they've dedicated, gigantic floor space just to medical devices today that are all part of connected health. There's plenty of entire trade shows that are all about connected health today. And so that's becoming a big part of that. And although it takes some specialized understanding and knowledge to get into that, it is an absolutely a viable sector today that's only going to grow exponentially over the next 5 to 10 years. Technology is a big part of that aging in place component. Global marketplace, we are now a global community, for good, for better, for worse. That's where we're at, and so you're starting to see a lot more crossover into other countries and other things being done in other countries. There's opportunity there if you would like to take that, both on the installation side, but also on the monitoring side as well. And you have a lot of local companies that are wanting to expand their global reach. So you may have somebody that you're working with today that traditionally has just been a North American kind of country or organization that now wants to expand into other parts of the world. And so you're going to figure out how to support that, including languages and text and written material and things like that. It's a lot of fun, a lot of challenges, but there's definitely opportunity there to be able to do that. We're definitely growing. When you really look at that in the United States, stats are pretty consistent across just about everybody's analysis. So it's not like this is a declining business. It's definitely growing and growing well and healthy. If you just look at what it looks like, there's no reason why it can't keep doing these numbers. And these are not our numbers. These are our organizations that have put these numbers together that specialize in doing these numbers. So that was kind of the end of what I had. I can certainly, field questions. I know Ken had talked about opening up some of the floor to audio. We can try that, or we can do it with text. I'm open to whatever works.
Questions? Well, we have a lot of people that usually have a lot to say, but we don't have any questions yet. I should probably call some of them out by name who I know are on listening to this webinar. Usually they have plenty to say. I'm curious whether they want to participate now, although that was a really thorough and well-informed presentation, Morgan, and I want to thank you for it. I also want to mention to everybody that we're going to put together a special presentation, and I've invited Morgan to participate. Bart Didden is going to participate, and we're going to look for one or two other central stations, perhaps. We're going to discuss what steps the central stations are taking right now in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic to make sure that they are continuing their operations. Obviously, you're in the life safety business, and we therefore want to know that the central station services are continuing. It's one thing. It's one thing to have the local dealer is certainly responsible for continuing to service its customers, but everybody is relying on the monitoring aspect as well. We have a question, Morgan, from Steve. What new skills do operators need in the future? that maybe today they don't have?
It's a great question. Some of the biggest skills that we are constantly looking for is multi-language. So, being able to speak not just English, but Spanish, French Canadian, some of the Asian dialects is becoming a big part of what we're hiring for. Rapid has always had a policy that we only hire people that have at least a 2-year college degree or an honorable discharge out of the military. So, getting that AA is a minimum, although the majority of our staff today have 4-year degrees and many don't. I think education is a big part of what we're looking for. We are looking for the person that looks and feels and acts like an NFL quarterback that sits in a desk. We're looking for somebody that can effectively make decisions very quickly, remain calm, and make those decisions correctly. Those are what we're looking for today. And so, get some education underneath your belt in our world, and that'll give you the ability to grow within our organization.
Okay. Where's you have to? Sorry. Okay, I have to. Okay, here we go. Let me just get back to questions here, see if there are any. Okay. In the midst of this world crisis, how can we leverage technology to ensure companies have business continuity, specifically regarding remote agent capabilities? And more important, how do we get UL and ULC on board? How do I make this bigger?
Really good question. So UL and ULC, both of them issued the same identical statements yesterday that say, basically, if you're in a position where you have no other option and you need to have employees work from home because of this crisis, then do so. There's a guideline to do it. There's some requirements. There's some security requirements for VPNs and for authentication and things like that. But UL is not so backwards that they don't understand that this is a problem right now. And so they've gone ahead and issued that statement. Nobody's going to get in trouble if they want to run agents at home, assuming they're following these basic guidelines. If your facility is, getting compromised or is in a place where it's getting shut down or you can't get people to work or you've got some problem like that. I don't think that's going to be a...
Morgan, does any central station actually have the ability to permit their operators to work from home? That would they have?
I think everybody. I think anybody that has any sense at all is either have made those arrangements or are making them right now to be able to do it. The technology is not hard to do, and if push comes to shove and you have to have people at home versus not at all, I'd rather have operators at home, working and dispatching high priority events than shuttering my doors and not having anything.
They're able to do that. They're able to do that from their own home desktop?
Yeah, as long as they have internet access and the technology to get them connected. I know personally that almost all the big guys that I've talked to already have put together home kits and are ready to roll in the event that they get compromised.
Well, are they actually logging into their desktop at Rapid? Or are they able to do everything right from their own home?
I've seen it being done both ways. I've seen some of them are doing like remote desktop, and I've seen some where they're sending home either laptops or desktops with networking gear to get them connected. I've seen both methodologies being used. The key to it is the phones, right? It's not the desktop. It's how do you get the phones and two-way audio and video and all that stuff piped through. And so there's ways to do it, and it's not complicated. You just have to have the setup to do it and the bandwidth to support it. If you don't have the bandwidth at your central station, that's going to be a big problem.
Bart says USA has done a lot of that already. We're gonna save that for that next webinar when I have Bart, when I have
Yep.
you and Morgan on there to explain to dealers what steps the central stations are taking to make sure that they have continuity and continued operations. That's what the next webinar will be about. And so we'll talk about that briefly. And that's going to be in a discussion format, by the way, instead of a webinar format. So you guys don't have to go out and prepare any webinar. So someone else just mentioned Cuomo, which is in New York, our New York governor, just announced less workforce on the road. Can Rapid fill us in when they hear what the rules for our industry are? Okay.
Sure.
What
Well,
rules from whom?
Yeah, so that's another really good question. I can tell you from the TMA side, the Monitoring Association side, we are very diligently working on getting the alarm industry and the central station officially categorized as a essential workforce. And if you read most of the local shutdowns, like if you look at San Francisco, Contra Costa, some of those that have issued quarantines, they've included service providers like for security systems and things like that in that essential workforce, which gets them the theoretical right to be able to drive to and from work, get to work, get home, and do what you need to do. We're trying to get that at a federal level. As you can imagine, the feds are pretty busy with a lot of stuff right now. So we're working hard trying to get that either out of Homeland Security or FEMA or somebody along that lines.
Well,
that's
Bart,
where we're at with
Bart,
that.
I've unmuted you in case you want to add anything.
Well, Morgan's on the right track. All of us that use the Sages platform are all kind of working together to put in all of this, capability. We have a very tight-knit group. And I've been in contact, as you know, Ken, I'm an elected official in my local municipality. I've talked to my county executive, and while he doesn't see sheltering in place as a directive anytime soon, he has assured us that he's going to include central station operators in the definition of essential services. And it's kind of hard not to understand or believe that a garbage man who is part of the essential services, because public sanitation is going to be extremely important, that central station operators aren't included as well.
Okay, and thanks for mentioning that you're a public official. Anyone has any tickets going through his town, make sure you mention my name, and we'll see what we can do for you. Okay, we have anything else? Any more announcements? Any more questions? If not, I'm going to thank Morgan for spending time with us and preparing a well-prepared presentation. And we're going to be tapping him again, like maybe tomorrow or by Friday. I'll send out an announcement when we're going to do the next webinar. That's going to deal with a little bit of what we discussed just now about steps central stations, specific steps central stations are taking to ensure their continued operations. And so this has been our first webinar in the series. All this was supposed to be presented at ISC, by the way. And I know not everyone, but some people are disappointed they weren't able to go. But I think this is has been a good way to reach out to people and cover a bunch of issues that are important to a lot of people in this industry. And someone has just said, great webinar, thank you. So that's Julie. Julie, you want me to unmute you so you could say that yourself? I don't want to put people on the spot. Nope. Okay. All right, everybody. we're gonna sign off, and thanks again to Morgan and everybody else, and we'll see you real soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.